Hey everyone. The art of communication is the response that you receive. And who doesn't want to get better responses? Whether it's from your family, people that you're selling a product to, or if you're giving a giant speech. Master communicator John K. Bates is my guest today. He has been advisor to NASA, GE Aerospace, Johnson & Johnson, JLABS, and countless others. We're going to share with you nuggets of how to be an effective communicator in the next 45 minutes. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. Today, my guest is John K. Bates. He specializes in the area where neuroscience meets leadership communication. He is a best-selling author and globally sought-after executive coach. He is one of the most prolific TED format coaches alive today. He has trained and coached leaders at NASA, GE Aerospace, U.S. Navy Special Operations, Johnson & Johnson's JLABS, Boston Scientific, Google, Intuit, and many more. He helps high-performing executives, introverts, and technical experts alike conquer speaking anxiety, generate true leadership presence, and build trust, loyalty, and connection in every interaction. His secret? A deep understanding of and ability to convey to others how humans are wired to listen, lead, and be led, combined with actionable storytelling strategies that influence and inspire. His clients have raised millions in VC funding, won high-stakes awards, pitch competitions, and secured game-changing grant awards. Welcome to Next Level Healing, John K. Bates.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Tara Perry. I hear you say all that stuff and it sounds pretty good. And then I'm like, dude, that guy must be really old.
You packed a lot in a short period of time. So
Well, it hasn't been such a short period of time.
So Tony Robbins likes to say that the art of communication is the response that you receive, and who doesn't want to get better responses with their time and energy in communicating? So I'm so grateful that you're here to share your secrets. I've been through your amazing itty bitty book of the Guide to Being TED Worthy, and I can't believe how much information is packed in here. So to
It
start
took
off,
years for me to pack that in there. That's way harder than the long book.
well, I just want to tell our listeners to fasten their seatbelts. We're going to dump a lot of information on them in a very short period of time. So, what are 3 ways to inspire and connect with any audience, anytime, any place on earth?
Well, okay. So the first one is from a guy named Les Brown. And he is one of the most highly requested, highly sought after, highly paid, highly respected public speakers of all time. And he told me years ago, and it really altered the trajectory of my speaking career and everything I did. He told me people don't connect with your successes, they connect with your messes. Your message is in your mess. And, it took me at least 10 years to figure out what I would call that, right? Because it's authenticity, it's being vulnerable, it's all of that stuff. And so that's what I now call, with a little fake TM at the end, insightful vulnerability. Not just what did you screw up, but what did you learn from that? Right. And that's what I think they call, Dr. Tara, in evolutionary biology, it's good signal, right? Because when you tell that story of something you really, really messed up, or that where you really failed, or you just super embarrassed yourself, and it's a real story, and then you share with us what you learned from that, that is meaningful signal. Right? Because you had to go through something super awful to learn that. And if I get it from you, I might avoid that, you
Mm.
know?
So our brains are wired to seek those kind of pieces of information.
Yeah, that is something that we definitely want. And just to kind of land it, uh, I I was a co-founder of a dot-com company back in 1997, 98, 99, 2000. In 2000, we had raised well over $80 million. The market turned, And our investors came in one day and they said, okay, boys, you've done what we asked. You did a good job. You grew while you were growing market share. You did a good job, but we don't think you can be profitable fast enough. So we're pulling the plug.
Mm.
And I was devastated. And I was so upset that I went into a corner, like instead of, okay, what's next? I went into a corner and cried about it, curled up in a ball, and almost died of an autoimmune disease.
Mm.
And they think it was brought on by all that lack of sleep and then the added dash of that just embarrassment and shame and sadness and anger and fear and everything of losing the company. And as I sat in that room thinking that I might die with doctors lined up down the hall to see my condition because it was so rare, uh, I had a conversation with the universe and I said, I have been really small and selfish. Like I've been a nice guy and everything, but it's always been about me. And I don't want that to be how I go out. So big is the universe, whatever you are, if you let me walk out of here, I promise I will make my focus be to make a difference. Everything else will be secondary to that. Like my whole thing is going to be to make a difference. And I got to walk out and I wasn't okay for a long time. Took me a year or two or three to really recover from that. But every day since then has been total gravy because I've kept that promise. I kept that deathbed promise. I really do think about making a difference as my number one guiding light, and everything else is secondary. And it completely, I mean, I'm getting all teary eyed thinking about it right now. Like it changed my life.
I was just talking about John J. Martini before we started this, and that's all about connecting to your values. And that's a lot of what you're doing is helping people share their values with their audience. And the story you just told, I mean, it's like, I want to hear everything else you've got to say now.
Well, thank you. That makes me glad.
Because I mean, you were just vulnerable. So you talk about two things that are counterintuitive, like well-written speeches draw the worst response from audiences.
Yes.
And if you lead with all your credentials like me, that also turns people off. So that doesn't that go along with what you just said? Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
Yes. So the number two way to connect with and inspire any audience, anywhere, anytime, is from a guy I love and respect named Craig Valentine. And he taught me again years ago when I really was started digging into this stuff. He said, don't make yourself special. People don't relate to a guru, right? Make the process special because you do have to talk about your successes sometimes. You don't want to only talk about your messes, right? Yes, that's great. But when you need to talk about your successes, if you highlight the process that led to that success, people don't get stuck with you thinking you're all that. They're like, "Oh, that's a great process." And if you can identify the processes that have you succeed, you become more valuable because now it's not some kind of one-off and we got lucky or whatever. I in high school in Salt Lake City, Utah, from 8th grade to 12th grade, I won every contest I ever entered in public speaking and debate, first, second, or third place, except one time, my freshman year. And that judge actually found me. He saw me at another debate meet in my junior year, 2 years later, 3 years later, and he chased me down and he said, "You know what? I got to tell you, I gave you a loss. It was my mistake. I should have given you the win. I'm really glad I got a chance to apologize to you. I'm sorry about that. You should have won." And I was like, well, thank you. So I had a pretty successful, high school public speaking career. And I used to think that's because I was good till I met Craig and he told me this. And I looked back over some of the successes in my life. And that was just one of the, like it wasn't the only one, but it was a big one. And I realized something. I was like, oh my gosh, I had a world-class debate and public speaking coach at my public high school in Salt Lake City, Utah. His name was D.L. Smith. And I loved that guy. He was insane. Like, he would stay and work with you till midnight or 1 if you wanted to do it. You would have to go home first, right? And if he got mad, like one time he threw a cake at me across the whole room. Like, he was totally certifiably loony, insane, brilliant. And I did anything he asked. And so, completely by accident on all counts, I had a world-class coach and I was coachable. And that's how I did that. I just did anything he said. He said jump and I said how high, right?
Accident, no accident, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
universe
Yes.
had something in store for you.
Yes, exactly. Well, yes. Yes, absolutely. And if you look at Tiger Woods, like, that's how he did it too. He had multiple coaches. None of his coaches could beat him at golf, or they would have. But because he was totally coachable and they were world-class coaches, they had him beat what seemed like everybody for what seemed like forever, right? So find a great coach and be coachable.
Fantastic. And what's
You
3?
know, three is where we pull it all together. It's from a woman named Nancy Duarte, who's a hero of mine. And she says, don't be the hero of your own talk. Make the audience the hero. Don't be Luke Skywalker, be Yoda. You
Mhm.
know? So then when I'm doing this live, I travel with lightsabers. I mean, I've got them right over there. And like big full size, you can whack them together lightsabers. And I'll do a little thing where I get up on stage and I'll say, okay, let's try this out. Okay. So I'm going to be Luke, and we'll see what you think. And then I'll be Yoda and we'll see how that goes. Okay. So I fire up my lightsaber and I like show off with it and I, do all the things and right. And then I'm like, oh, thank you very much. And the lightsaber, and everybody gives me a little applause, I'm like, okay, thanks. These things are dangerous. I didn't hurt anything. Pretty good. So let's try it again though now. Let's see how it works the other way. If I'm Yoda or Obi-Wan and I fire it up, and I'm like, okay, this is an elegant weapon from a more civilized time. And if you practice and use the force, you could change the destiny of the galaxy. And I go give it to somebody in the audience. And then I run and grab another one and invite them up, and we have a little lightsaber duel. And then when they go sit down, I say, so, if you practice and you use the force, you could change the destiny of the galaxy. Thank you. And then I get a wild applause because they think that's awesome, right? And then I say, obvious question, but which one did you like better, right? The
Yeah.
first one or the second one? Everybody's like, oh, the second one, right? So don't be the hero of your own talk. Make the audience the hero. And then here's what I love. Let's bundle this all up, okay? Let's just say you have an event coming up. You don't know what to really do. So here, you try this. You share a story about where you failed and what you learned, like a really, really gnarly one. And then you talk about a couple of things you did after that that worked and the processes that you used that had those work. And then you hand that to us and you say, now take the things that I had to learn the hard way, take these processes that we know work, and go be great in your life. Right?
Love it.
Okay, that's going to work. You
That is
might
so
forget a few
brilliant.
words. Pardon me?
That is so brilliant.
That's definitely, one way to do it that will work.
So how many TED, speakers have you coached through that process?
Boy, it's a good question. I do pro bono coaching for the TED Fellows program. I never ever have worked for TED. Like, I'm not an official TED coach, but I do officially coach pro bono for the TED Fellows program. So I've coached a number of TED Fellows who took the TED stage. And then I've coached a whole bunch of, like, I've coached 35 or more TEDx events. And I've coached, a number of other people that have spoken on the actual TED stage, but like, I didn't coach any of the ultra famous ones. But actually, what I will say though is I coached Dolph Lundgren. Do you know who he is? The actor, the tough guy
Yep,
actor.
yep.
His TEDx talk is bring down the house good. It is so good. And that's got million, hundred, like 20, 30, 100, like I don't know how many views, but millions and millions and millions of views, because of who he is. And it is such a good talk.
How did you get into working with all these giant companies? I mean, communication is so critical to success. At what point did you come onto the radar of NASA and GE Aerospace and Johnson and Johnson's JLABS and all these giants
Yeah.
to have them harness your skills for their benefit?
Well, I started out coaching for the TEDx uh, organizers of Southern California. Like we would all get together, and I would always volunteer for these TEDx events, and knew all the organizers, and they knew that I was an evangelist for my tech companies and all that. So they're like, "Hey, John, will you help us train these people?" Right? So I put together a training and started doing those trainings. And I'll tell you a big, like, this is a moment I just got present to again recently. In one of those early trainings, I was telling this woman, this is a really good book report about, what you want to say, but I want to go on the journey with you. I want you to show me, don't just tell me. And I went, "Oh my God, that is exactly what I'm doing wrong with this training right now." My training, as I have put it, the PowerPoint and all that, I'm telling everybody great things to do, but I'm not doing any of them as I'm delivering that. So I went home that night, put in every place I said, never tell a story without a point and never make a point without a story. I'd say that, but I wasn't doing that. So I went in and did that. And and all the things that I'm telling people to do, I went through and made absolutely sure that I had baked in doing them myself. And the next time I trained for a TEDx event, one of the people there was a woman who became whose company got bought by Johnson and Johnson, and she became the global head of Johnson and Johnson Innovations JLABS. And from my coaching with her from the TEDx thing, she said, "You are way more than a speaker coach. You are an executive whisperer. I'm keeping you close to me for the rest of my career. I'm introducing you to my private circle of everybody that matters to me. We're going to be friends for life." And she kept her word and just absolutely dragged me into the stratosphere. And I was doing a public training in Houston, and the folks from NASA showed up. And I was doing a thing about storytelling, and they came up to me afterwards and they said, "You know what? We need you because we work with manned space flight. And if we can't make what we do sound interesting to the taxpayers, we don't deserve to do it. Will you help us?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So, that moment I started walking my talk was a big breakthrough, actually eating my own dog food. And then I was just really lucky. And when I would go into these places, people would tell their friends about me. They'd hear somebody saying, "I feel a little nervous about speaking to the board next month." And they go, "Oh, call John."
Tell us a story about somebody who was just totally falling on their face, maybe a technical person that just had something that great, but just was
Yeah.
moronic at being able to communicate in a way that, humans with emotions, would respond to, and what that was like for them to change.
So, there's a few stories that come up. There's, there's one guy that, like, what the story that really comes strong for me out of that question is this guy, and I won't say the company, I won't say his name. But there was this big medical company, and they had this guy on the board, or I mean on the executive team, and he was clearly the bad speaker. Like, everybody else on the board was just so good and right, and then he'd get up and it'd be like, "Ah," right?
Mm.
And I think this goes to a little bit of what you do. See what you think, but so he came in, he took my course, did some one-on-one coaching, and then I got together with him before he was going to go do the board meeting. And one thing that I identified was that he was just taking what marketing wrote for him and then trying to
Mm.
pretzel himself around delivering what they wrote instead of changing what they did so it was authentic for him. So that was
Mm.
a big breakthrough, but there was still something. So we're in there, and I said, "Okay, get up, present to me like I'm the board. I want you to imagine the board sitting over here, ready, go." And all of a sudden, it was just like, and he, like couldn't quite get his words out, and he was, and I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?" And I said, "Okay, so what does this remind you of?" And he goes, "Oh my God, my dad had to move every year for his job. So I was always," it's going to make me cry because this is why I love my job, right? He's like, every year I had to be the new kid at school, right? And I had to stand there and everybody knew each other and I was the new kid. And are they going to like me? Are they going to accept me? What's this year going to be like, right? Who's the bully? Right? So when he would get up in front of the board under a stressful situation, that would become the driver, and he didn't realize that was what was driving. But the minute that we surfaced that and got it conscious, it was like day and night. And it was like that, transformation is instantaneous
Wow, that's
sometimes.
great. How great of you to have the insight to ask him that question.
It was pretty cool. Nice.
Yeah, under stress, we don't rise to what we want. We default to what's stuck in that subconscious mind.
Yes, exactly.
So you
Yeah.
have some great neurobiology information. You talk about the paleomammalian brain and the neocortex, and you
Yeah.
talk about how the paleomammalian brain has the hands on the steering wheel, and it's not logical. It responds to gut feelings, and this has
Yep.
been proven by
fMRI.
fMRI.
Yeah.
Hello, I know that term. Why am I not?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, so I tell people one of the early things that I realized when I really started to get, because I mean, I blew my first time on the TED stage. I was on a side stage, but I was at the TED conference and I blew it. And I was like, I got to figure this out. So I started looking at the neurobiology and the evolutionary biology of human communication. And one of the things that really struck me early on is that communicating with human beings is not logical. You may have noticed, right? It's not logical,
Well,
it's
you look at
biological.
advertising and none of that's logical, here's
No.
a product that'll help you sleep, and there are these pink and blue bunny rabbits jumping around.
Yeah, exactly. No, it doesn't make any sense on some level, right?
Mhm.
So if you're very logical and you're one of those introverted engineering, whatever, kind of very logical in whatever way you are, that's great. That's useful, that's important, but logic by itself is, while it's necessary, it's not sufficient, right? Communicating with human beings is not logical, it's biological. So I like to point out to people that if you look at a cross section of the human brain, you'll see the brain stem. And then wrapped around that is the midbrain. And I know that we could go deeper and like it's more subtle than this and everything, but this still works. This is still fundamentally true. The brainstem and the midbrain, and together they form the paleo mammalian brain. And then wrapped around the outside of that is the neocortex. And neo means new, and paleo, like stone, right? Like that's the very old brain. The reason it's paleo mammalian is because all mammals have that paleo mammalian brain, like the dog, the cat, the cow. We do, monkeys do, right? So, but then wrapped around the outside is our neocortex, our new brain. So I'll say something that's kind of weird. I'll say it twice. So the ancient paleo mammalian brain does not have access to language or logic or reason, but it does have access to reality on a fundamentally deeper level than we will ever have access consciously. So I'll say that one more time. The paleo mammalian brain does not have access to language or logic or reason. That's all in the neocortex wrapped around the outside. But the paleo mammalian brain, it perceives reality on a deeper level than we will ever be conscious of. And what I
Like,
mean
do
by
I
that,
need to run from T-Rex?
yes. Yeah, like instant. It's really, really, really quick. And it smells things we'll never notice consciously. It sees patterns in things we'll never notice. It hears things. It smells pheromones and it sees facial micro expressions, and it reads and understands all this stuff, but it can't just tell us, hey, something's wrong, something's off here. What I'm noticing is no, because it doesn't have language. So the way it communicates with us is through gut feelings.
Mm.
So I like to point out to people, if your mom didn't tell you, I'm telling you now, trust your gut. That's actually good information, like provably good information. And so if the elevator door opens and the hair stands up on the back of your neck and you think I shouldn't get in there, don't get in there.
Yep.
Okay? Because if it's a nice person, they'd want you to trust your gut. And if it's not a nice person, we don't want you in there with them. Yeah. So that's right. Yeah. Our brain, when somebody says, oh, let me tell you a story about that, our brain lights up in the same way it lights up if we were to push a lever and expect a treat to fall out. So stories are super powerful,
It's probably
right?
why that's probably why we would like to binge watch our favorite TV shows too.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. Right.
So
Well,
you look
so
Go ahead.
yes. No, I was just going to say, so the point of that whole paleo-mammalian neocortex thing is that when we all think we're logical, but if I put you, the most logical person listening right now, in an fMRI machine and we watched you make a decision in real time, what we would see is, boom, your paleo-mammalian brain fires first, making the decision. And then right after that, your neocortex fires, agreeing or disagreeing with, but not making the decision. And when you're in a situation where you're trying to influence somebody or get somebody to do something or sell something or whatever, and you get that response, do you like it? Yes. Do you think it's priced right? Yes. Do you think it would make a difference for you? Yes. Do you want to buy it? No. We're not ready yet.
Mm,
It's like, wait, what? Yes, 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 no.
mm,
Okay, well, here's what just happened. In hindsight, it's really obvious. Logic, 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 emotion. We
mm,
didn't make an emotional connection. So even though the logical brain wanted it, the logical brain's wrapped around the outside of the emotional brain. We don't get the signal to sign the check because the emotional brain says, nah, I don't really trust this person yet. I don't feel connected to them. It doesn't feel right yet, right? So we've got to make that emotional connection if we want to get what I call the fourth and most important yes.
That's why when a realtor takes you into a place, they're like, "Can't you just imagine being here
Yeah.
watching
Yes. Yeah.
television, kicking your feet
Yeah.
up?"
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
really, yeah, I think any master salesman knows that, and thank you so much for dissecting it for us. And the reverse is true too. It's like if you go in and a guy is, looking at a motorcycle and he's going, "I'd never buy this. I can't, my wife wouldn't approve, da 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 da." And the salesman's really slick. And remember those great days in high school when you were like the hottest thing ever? And
Yeah.
wouldn't this just take you right back to those times?
Yeah. I was like, okay, maybe I'll take it. Yeah. Yeah.
But whatever the price is, yeah, I don't care. Whatever, whatever my
Yeah.
family will hate it, I don't care, because you've made the emotional decision. So you make the
Exactly.
emotional decision first, and then the logic brain reinforces it.
Justifies it. Yeah.
Super cool. That is awesome. You also learned an important lesson from a very unlikely source, Snoop Dogg.
That's for sure.
Tell us about that
So
lesson.
yeah, so I got some advice from a really unusual source. And then what made it even more interesting to me is that I got basically the same advice said very differently from a very different source. So one was Snoop Doggy Dogg, the other was one of the world's leading leadership trainers and coaches anywhere in the world. And her name was Candace Shivers Morgan. So Snoop Dogg said it like this. He said, "Don't be nervous. Be at their service." And
Beautiful.
that's my former service dog, Flash, who helped me manage that autoimmune disease for about 15 years. But so now you know the inside secret service dog, and it says be of service. But so don't be nervous, be at their service, which is just brilliant advice. Candace said it a little differently. She said, John, if you get up on stage and you have your attention on yourself, then you have your attention on a minor ball of petty concerns that's of no real interest to anyone but you. Ouch. But it's true. She said, if, however, you get up on stage and you have your attention on the audience and the difference that you're going to make for them and the difference they're going to make with the people in their lives because of it, now you have your attention on something worth thinking about. Don't be nervous, be at their service.
And you also make a great point that by being up on stage, you are taking up a lot of other people's precious time. And so
Mm,
put the time into it to make it amazing. You talked about how Steve Jobs would put an hour in for every minute that he spoke.
yes, which seemed kind of crazy to me. But obviously, the results speak for themselves. Like, Steve Jobs wasn't born a great communicator, he became a great communicator, and it was with a lot of effort. And then you're referring to what I, you know, um, narcissistically call the Bates equation. I just couldn't think of anything else, and I figured it's nice to have an equation named after you,
Of
right?
course, if
So,
you're going to discover a body part, name it after you. If you're going to discover an
there
equation,
you
name it
go.
after you.
So I call it the Bates equation, and it goes like this: 1 times 20 times 3,000. That's me speaking for 20 minutes to 3,000 people. That's 60,000 minutes. Divide by 60, and we get 1,000 hours of human life that I consume in one 20-minute talk to 3,000 people. And I don't want to prepare. Wha Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute, John, because I didn't used to like to prepare. I was a wing it guy, but then I got, oh my gosh, and then, Steve Jobs, he stole that from somebody, Winston Churchill.
Oh,
He used to
wow.
do the same thing, an hour
Mm.
for every minute.
Mm. Well, I actually took your advice to heart because I was introducing somebody at the Soho House for a book signing just this
Uh-huh.
last week, and I had like 90 seconds of introducing him and getting him, grooved into the audience before we did this kind of live podcast together.
Yeah.
And I took your words to heart, and I practiced it, and I practiced it, and I practiced it, and I practiced it. So it was just so down, and it worked great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did that go?
It
Like,
worked great, and I wouldn't have
yeah,
done it. I would have thought, I know the guy, I know the book, I'll just wing it." But
yeah,
it worked so much better when I had this whole little, template to go off of
yeah,
that I
yeah,
had
that
that
makes
that
me really glad.
well, thank you. I
Congratulations,
all
that's
because
great to hear.
all because of you. Um,
Yay.
you have another interesting, nugget. I mean, there's so many in here, and, tell us the name of your fleshed out book, the bigger one, that, has, more of the goodies in it. I mean, this is
So
great
that's
for a quickie.
Yeah, that's a good quickie. The book is actually kind of the book version of my online course, and I call it TED Worthy Leader: Connect, Inspire, Transform. And that if you're somebody who learns best with reading, that's a great way to go about it. And I just put, the way that so I feel really fortunate because when I started doing this, somehow randomly a little bit before, I had come across an article about how the US Marine Corps went up against a bunch of traders, like, from the stock market in some war games. And the traders kept cleaning the Marines' clocks. They would crush the Marines. And the Marines sat down to figure out what in the heck happened. And they realized that the Marines worked on decision trees. If this, then that, here go there, right? Like, they had kind of that structure. Whereas the traders were working on principles based, like, approaches. And so I was like, oh, damn, that's a really good point, right? Like, if it's principles based, it is going to work better. So I made my course and subsequently the book to be principles based. And it's just chock full of principles from neurobiology, evolutionary biology, every place else I could pick from. But they're principles so that, and the cool thing about principles is they're usually something that's really obvious in hindsight. Like, when
Mm.
you can state it as a principle, it's like, oh yeah, okay. So it's not like you have to super remember all this stuff. You're like, this is the principles and they help you operate. And when people get those principles, they get a lot more courageous and comfortable and creative, and just all kinds of good things happen because they've got the principles they need to be good at communication and influence. And that allows them to be extra creative and confident and comfortable. And so it's pretty cool.
I love principles-based learning. You also mentioned about how okay, so public speaking is a bigger fear than death itself.
I mean, pretty darn close, right?
Well, no, they've studied it. I mean, they've done
Yeah,
all these things, and people answer that they fear public speaking more than they do death,
yeah,
and there's a reason for that. Would you tell us
there
about that?
is.
Because public speaking is inherently dangerous.
It's dangerous. Look what happened to Jesus and Joan of Arc and Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy and Socrates, right? Got noticed by the group. And so, my dad was a combat Marine in Vietnam, and he was wounded in Vietnam and was in pain for the rest of his life, but he lived to be like 84. And one of the things that I remember him teaching me when I was really young, and I wish I could remember the context. I think I was just going on about how fearless someone was. He goes, "Son, you do not want a fearless foxhole buddy. That guy will get you killed.
Mm.
You want a courageous foxhole buddy, somebody who is scared, but is willing to take action if it's warranted. That's called courage, not fearless." And I was, and I'll never forget that. Like, I don't know why that stayed with me so much, but that's for sure what it is. We have a word, and you know this word, for people who are utterly unafraid, genuinely fearless of public speaking. That's sociopath,
Mm.
right?
Or
So
people that don't prepare and end up failing.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's that too, right? Yeah. So, it is public speaking's dangerous. Like getting noticed by the group, like, you could blow it. But you've got something that matters more to you than your fear. So you're willing to step up on that stage. You're willing to share your message with a group, get noticed, take a leadership position, whatever it is. That is called courage. And when people are willing to get up in the face of that fear for something that matters more to them than their fear, not only is that courage, that's really generous. So I think public speaking is always an act of courage and generosity.
Boy, that is a beautiful distinction. So I'm generally not so much a book learner. I'm more of a audio learner. Tell me
Uh-huh.
about your course and how somebody like me could benefit from it.
Yeah, so it's I maybe we could come up with a better name right now for it, but in the beginning when I created it, I called it the Speak Like a Leader Boot Camp. Because my dad was a Marine, like whatever. So it's the Speak Like a Leader Boot Camp. But what it is, like I said, is those principles, and I go through a bunch of different aspects of public speaking, and it if you went into it wanting to create a talk or a keynote or a TED talk, you could use all the prompts and you would come out the other end with really great material to do that. And it's available online, and I could certainly give you a link for that. And if, I almost never discount it. Like I just like, here it is, take it or leave it. But I would be happy to send something to you that you could, put, or like I'll create a code or something.
You're awesome. Thank
Um,
you so much. I appreciate that. So
well, you're
where
welcome.
where do people go to your website? How do they access your material? Where do they get all the goodies? Because there's a ton of goodies in this. In fact, we've been talking for 45 minutes and we haven't even gone through your 10 commandments, which are so vital in here. I mean,
Yeah,
we could talk for another 4 hours on that. So
just that alone.
people
Yeah.
either have to get your itty bitty guide to being TED worthy or go to your website. And where do they find your website?
So it's the super easy one is johnbates.com. Just JOHNBATES.com. And when people go there, something I highly recommend they do if they're interested in this is when you go to the website, after a couple seconds, you'll get a pop-up and it'll say, "Hey, would you like to get the same things that I send to NASA and Boston Scientific and Johnson and Johnson? I do these 1 to 2 minute video clips. I call them micro trainings. Once a week, every Sunday, I send those out. And if people want to get those for free, they can just go to my website and put in their contact info. And then, at first you'll get, for 7 days, you'll get one email a day. It's an onboarding sequence with a bunch of great stuff. And you don't have to go through it all right at once. You can save it and do it later. But then it'll flop over and it'll just be every Sunday. And that'll make an enormous difference for people. I pour a lot into that. And so if people want that, that's free. And then the course, I'm not even sure if it's easy to find it from the website. I got to go make sure.
Well, we can
But if
put it
they
in the
can't,
show notes. You can send it to me and we can put it in the show notes.
I will send it to you with a little bit of a discount as a thank you and an honorific for your listeners.
Awesome.
And
Thank you so much.
and then if they go to the website, heck, it's easy to get me. I'm just john@johnbates.com. If they want that course and they can't find it for any reason, just shoot me an email, john@johnbates.com.
Okay, last two questions. If you went back in time and talked to 10-year-old John, what would you say to him?
Gonna make me cry. I would say the things that people are teasing you about right now are the things you should pay attention to because they're your superpowers.
Wow, beautiful. And that's so true for so many people.
Yeah, I think so.
And then if you had a megaphone and people were listening and the megaphone went to all over the world, what would you say for a minute?
Ooh. Can we guarantee that they'll understand what I mean? Like,
It's
so
open, it's open to interpretation.
yeah, I think it's great. This is great because this is the TED question. What's your one idea we're spreading? And I haven't really thought about for like everybody in the world. I think that if I would go ahead and try this today, if you said go, I would say whenever you get really, really, really upset, it's not about what just happened. It's about what it reminds you of. Separate the two and be good to each other.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're super welcome.
Folks, thanks so much for joining us. Leave us a note in the comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions are expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.